Welcome to This Week in Morgan County. I'm your host, Russell Mokhiber. Our guest this week is Larry Springer. Larry is a local playwright, and he's written a couple plays that are going to be produced here at the Ice House in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia at the end of February. Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
When did you become a playwright?
Well, I never really became a playwright. I wrote some plays back when I was a student at school, and then I wrote another one when I was at graduate school at Hopkins doing some work on writing, and then I wrote one about a year ago based on a memoir I wrote for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So I've written about 4 plays.
And that's this memoir, The First 24 Years by Larry Springer. Why did you write this, about the first 24 years of your life?
I had 4 grandparents, 2 from Minsk, and my mother was born in Minsk, and I knew nothing about my grandparents. The only thing I knew that Minsk was better than Pinsk. That was an argument they had. The Minskers and the Pinskers had nothing to do with me, but that's all I know about
Those
their
were 2
comeback.
cities in Russia?
2 cities in Russia.
Okay.
The other side, my father's father was from Munich. My grandmother was from Latvia. I had no idea anything about them until they were in their 50s or 60s. I couldn't speak to my Russian grandparents because they didn't speak English. So consequently, I know nothing about them, and I thought, I don't want that to happen to my grandchildren or great-grandchildren, because we don't have any great-grandchildren yet. The way my kids are going, probably we won't see them, but I don't want them to think that I was born like this, and that we did a lot of funny things, and we got married, and we played music, and we did a lot of things.
Well, let's go through I'm interested in the first 24 years.
Okay.
Your grandparents came here.
1923, my grandparents came here with my mother. That's the picture on the cover, by the way.
Picture on the cover.
Yeah. My grandmother, my mother, and her 3 sisters.
Okay.
And none of them spoke English. Of course, they didn't have English for speakers of other languages. You just learned it.
Where did they come to? They come to Baltimore or where?
They came to Ellis Island, and then my grandfather had come earlier to make enough money to send for them. So he had been here a few years. So they came from Ellis Island into Baltimore, and they owned a little hardware store down on Pratt Street in Baltimore, right down in Fells Point area. At that time, there were ghettos. Every different group of people in Baltimore. There was a Jewish section, a Polish section, Italian section, a black. So they lived in the Jewish section. And,
there were ethnic ghettos.
Yeah. I mean, they were not financial ghettos; they were ethnic ghettos.
Ethnic ghettos, and these were your. This was your mother's family.
Right, 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and I would go see them, but I couldn't talk to them. They couldn't, So we grew up. The cousins grew up. We went our ways in certain things, but then I reached a point in my age where I said, "Well, why shouldn't my great-grandchildren know something about Patty and me? Where they're going to be the line that they go back to." And I thought I had a pretty colorful life, a lot of funny things.
Your mom met your dad in Baltimore?
Yeah. They
got married. They had you and how many siblings?
Well, they were always good planners. They got married in 1929 when the world caved in. And they tell some very interesting stories about not having a place to live and that. But they made it. My father was an ex-Marine. Who also had to quit school to support his family when he was in 10th grade.
What was his work? What did he do?
Well, they got owned a grocery store. They would move to Washington, bought a grocery store, and I talk about my first.
Wait, they moved
memories.
to Washington D.C.?
Yeah.
Where? Do you know where it was?
Down there where the stadium is.
Okay.
I know they had a half-acre little lot down there that sold for about $14 million not too many years ago when he built a stadium on it. They couldn't wait.
Navy Yard.
Yeah. And they didn't go for that. But my first memories in my memoir has to do with that little store. It was in a African-American neighborhood. And I remember the guys that used to carry me and take me around to all their homes. And I was a little kid, 9, 10, 11. No, I was 6, even less, 4 and 5 years old. And I still remember these marvelous guys that took me as, But then they decided that wasn't going to work. They moved to Baltimore. He got a job with the post office. Worked there for 30 years.
The grocery store in D.C. didn't work, but you were born in D.C.
I was born in Baltimore, but they moved to D.C. probably when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And that's, by the way, is where I saw Franklin Delano Roosevelt in person. Not a lot of people alive can say that. I was out front with my grandfather. He had a store there, and he was sweeping it, and I was about 5 years old. Would have been 1942, maybe. 43, 40, no, it would be early, yeah, 42 or 43. And I was standing up out with him. I was a little kid drinking a Dr. Pepper in the morning. And this big Cadillac pulled up, stopped at a light. And my grandfather looked over and said, "Good morning, Mr. President." And then Franklin D. looked out and said, "Morning, gentlemen." I remember that. I will never forget that. I mean, he's one of the major names in the world of politics. So, but then they moved to Baltimore, and then I started.
The grocery store didn't move. It didn't work.
They just left it, and they sold it, and they moved to Baltimore, and he got a job in the post office.
And you grew up in Baltimore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Went to public school there?
Yeah, public school, Arlington 234, Garrison Junior High School, Forest Park High School. That's the Forest Park High School of Barry Levinson. Avalon. You remember those movies, Avalon, Liberty Road, and all that? Well, I was part of that. I was the 2 years ahead of that. But I remember, I remember all the things he writes about. Again, the ethnic communities, the dinners, the families, and the diner. My little group of musicians were denizens of the same diner. We didn't think we were smart enough to write about it. But
did you start playing music in high school?
I started when I was 9 years old. They were giving music lessons at the local elementary school for 50 cents. And you could rent an instrument for $2, which was tough on my parents then, because they not a lot of money going at that time. And I started playing, and I did very well. So they moved me up to a better teacher. Then I went to a conservatory teacher, and
you're playing the trumpet.
Yeah.
Why the trumpet? Why did you choose?
I had no idea. It just had a choice of 3 instruments: clarinet, violin, and trumpet. And I picked the loudest one. And became very good. I was at I guess, first chair in the state bands, Maryland, for 2 years before I graduated. And I had scholarships to go to some major schools, and I went to Navy instead, and became a Navy musician for 4 years. And by the time I was 19, I had visited Rome and Athens and Florence.
With the Navy?
Yeah, with the Navy. 9 major cities.
When were you in the Navy? When was it? What years were you in the Navy?
1953 to 1957. I went in at 18 and came out at 22.
Why did you choose military over college?
I have no idea. I got to tell you, things happen. I was walking Forest Park High School. Let me tell you, Forest Park High School was 90% 4-year college. So for someone to join the Navy from Forest Park High School was like an Orthodox Jew going to a seminary. That didn't make any sense. And my parents said, "What do you want to do that for?" I said, "Why not? I don't want to go to school." But they couldn't have afforded it. Even with scholarships, they couldn't have afforded it. And I went into the room, and there was this big ship picture and a couple of guys with the hats, and I was really impressed. And I said, "What do you got for musicians?" They showed me the Navy School of Music. You go there, you enlist. So when you finish boot camp, you don't go anywhere, but you go to Navy School of Music. From there, you go out into the fleet or things like that.
Where was the Navy school?
In Anacostia, Washington, D.C.
And did you actually live there?
Oh yeah, well, you're in a service. I mean, it was like you went from boot camp. You spent 12 weeks getting reduced to rubble.
So what did you do in the Navy? Is the answer, I played the trumpet?
I played the trumpet, yeah.
For 4 years?
Yeah. A year and a half on a battleship. Fantastic experience. I was 19 years old. I've been all around the world.
And the point of a Navy band on a battleship is to entertain the troops?
Well, yeah, you have a lot of things that they do on deck. And also, the Iowa was the first big major ship to go back into the Mediterranean after the Second World War. We're talking 1954, right? So we had a lot of functions to play, a lot of fancy things, and people coming up, and we played half a dozen national anthems every morning. And then in the evening, some of us would go out. We'd play in nightclubs. They love American musicians. So my friend Nino Silva was a pianist I worked with. We would go anywhere with our trumpet and his piano, and we had the lyres, and they'd see Navy musicians, they'd call us up, and we were really, Nino was the best pianist I've ever played with in my life, and I've been playing for 50 years. And I was very good. And they would buy us dinner and drinks, and we'd play for the. We did a whole lot of PR that wasn't in the program.
And by that you mean people felt good about the United States by seeing these
loved
military musicians.
They loved American musicians. They would see us and come up and play in the middle of the set. And we did. I write all about that in the memoir. I think kids would be interested in knowing what it was like.
And where you played was around the Mediterranean. You played in France and Italy.
We were in Italy, France, Athens, Greece, Istanbul. There's a funny story about Istanbul, and it's hysterical.
Why don't you tell that story and see if it's hysterical? It's not for TV.
No, I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on smuggling cigarettes, but I don't want to get caught.
Okay.
All right, but we didn't have any money, so anyway, I was 19 years old, and so wherever we went, I remember Istanbul was this beautiful club, Taksim Casino it was called, all pink.
Wait, the name of the club was Taksim.
Taksim, Taksim. I can remember that. I can remember my phone number now, but I can remember that. And we went in there, and they saw us. We played, and it was a beautiful place. And we had to leave to get back to the ship in time, because if you don't go back to the ship in time, they don't care what you do. They're going to put you in a brig for the weekend. But again, think of yourself at 19. This was a major step for a kid who, was like a house pet. He did everything. So from there, I went to Brooklyn for a year and a half and played in the U.S. Navy band in Brooklyn. And I ran all the dance bands and show bands and things out of there, and studied with a great trumpet player who really brought me up to the peak. Came out and went to Peabody. And that's where I met my wife, and that's as far as I go, up to the wedding.
Are you going to write your second part of this, or are you just...
I don't know.
The point of focusing on the first 24 years was what?
So that my great-grandchildren, or our great-grandchildren, would understand we were people, and not an old picture on the wall, and not somebody whose teeth are dropping out, and we didn't mate them before they died, but it was all right, and to know where they came from, the kind of people we were, what kind of life we lived. You can imagine the 1940s now, right? Imagine them 40 years from now. It's closer to the Civil War than it is anything else, and I felt that I had a great wanting to know about my great-grand, and I would never know about them.
Did you live your life in music? I mean, did you work as a musician throughout your life?
I worked as a musician up until I became a high school assistant principal in Baltimore County. Then there was no way to play weekends and work a high school. It was a tough business. It was a tough business then, it's a tough business now.
Well, after Peabody, so you go to Peabody, it was
I taught music for 5 years in elementary school.
Okay.
Then 7 years in junior high school. I had a 100-piece junior high school band. It was fantastic. And I kept going to school taking credits, and I got certified for administration, and I got promoted to a very tough high school in Baltimore County. It was just the beginning of integration. They had been on the news for riots the year before, and the superintendent threw the whole group out and brought a whole new group in to straighten this place out. It was really the OK Corral. I was 35 years old. And within a year, we had pretty much me and four of us actually, a principal and 3 assistants. We made a pretty good school, but it was full time. I mean, I would call Patty, I said, I can't come home right now. We just had a bomb go off in the bathroom. It happened. Right. We had shootings, knifings. It was mean. Until it kind of brought everything under control. It was, but you can't do that and then go out and play a bar mitzvah.
Did Patty live her life in music also?
Yeah.
What did she do throughout her life?
Well, she was a marvelous accompanist, absolutely marvelous pianist. Yeah, we met in music school. We got married very early. And my kids say, "Why did you get married so early?" I said, "Because when we were your age, we couldn't live together. You don't do that, especially when your wife-to-be's brother is 6'5" and 280 pounds. You don't live together." And we wanted to be together, so we got married. And never regretted it. It was 57 fantastic years. But something had to give. I couldn't do both of the jobs, so I stopped playing. And I didn't play for 30 years until I came back up here. We moved up here.
Wait, you didn't play for 30 years. What were you doing for those 30 years?
I was running high schools.
Okay.
And then after that, I just didn't play.
What brought you out to West Virginia?
Back in our early days, Patty had a friend, she was choir director, and she had a friend who owned land up here. So they came up here, and Patty said, I sat for like 2 hours and heard like acorns fall, and sirens weren't going off, and I was getting a phone call from you, I'll be back from the hospital. So there was a place called the Woods, the original Woods. It goes back into the 70s. You could get 2 acres of land and a shelf for $6,950. So we got one, and we came up here, and we became kind of addicted to weekends.
What
and
year
sessions.
was that? What year was that about?
About 73, 74, and it was virtually undeveloped. I mean, the Cool Font was just starting out, and the Woods now, of course, went into something else. And we did that until our kids reached a certain age where on the weekends, they didn't want to come up here. They were cheerleaders, and they were baseball players and all that. And you don't leave 14-year-old kids behind, so we sold it. The minute you sold it, you think, what was I thinking? So a couple of years later, we came back up and we found another place out in Oregon Woods when the kids were older, and we stayed there for a long time. And then we decided to retire partially. We worked at Peabody Elder Hospital, which is hooked up with Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, for 10 years. Patty started it, and I came in the second year, and we turned it into the biggest one in the country. We were bringing over $1 million a year in the Hopkins. It didn't show in our salaries. And we did that for 9 or 10 years, and then we decided that's enough. We came up here, and we needed a place in town because we found out that people in Morgan County, if they have to go 5 miles, they pack everything. So we live 10 miles from town, so our students don't want to come out that far. So we moved into town on Webster Street, where we are now.
And these two plays that you've written that are going to be produced at the are going to be put on here at the Ice House at the end of February. One is called "Take My Demon, Please."
Okay.
What is that about?
All right.
And who's the demon?
Okay. Well, I'd be telling. I had to take every 30 credits you get, you got a pay raise in Baltimore County. So after you get your master's degree, you have 2 sections of 30. So I was in my last section of 30, and I had about 10, 12 credits left over. I decided to take all writing courses. And I took a poetry course, which you don't ever want to read, and a short story course, which was worse than the poetry. But then I really got hung up on a playwriting course with Dr. Ariano, marvelous teacher. She's great. Even if you wrote trash, he made you feel like Eugene O'Neill. Was a great guy. And at the end of the semester, everybody, there was about 12 of us in the class, turned into one actor. We picked the best 3 and we performed them. And then I took the second semester with them. We did the same thing. And then I needed 3 credits to have my 60 and be finished with education forever. And he arranged with Hopkins and I arranged with Baltimore County to do one-on-one. And that's where I wrote the play that I think you were in, Rocking Chairs. We did a few years ago. It was under his, he didn't write anything. He just, and then I didn't think about it anymore until I wrote this memoir. And in the memoir, I was coming up with so many funny things that I had. And I think it would be really interesting for my great-grandchildren to know that I worked at strip clubs when I was 22 years old.
Why did you work at strip clubs?
That's all that was available. I came out of the Navy. Didn't matter how good I was.
Wait, there's no place you could play but a strip club in Baltimore?
I needed steady money to go to school. It paid big bucks, $12 a night. And, and all the humiliation you could eat, right? But that's all there was.
Wait, so you're playing music to the stripper?
Yeah.
It's like, so in other words, your music was background for the stripper.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would that sound like, for example? No, okay.
Well, it was 3 pieces. It was a very funny group because it was Sal Lozinski, Teddy Rosenberg, and me. So I was 3 Jewish guys playing for these strippers up there. And somebody said, "What do you do on Yom Kippur?" He said, we invite 3 guys in that don't play as good as we do, so we don't lose the job. So I did that for a year and a half. It is an amazing experience. A world doesn't exist anymore. That world doesn't exist. You could walk down Baltimore Street 4 o'clock in the morning and nobody bothered you because it was protected. The mayor's office sat over. I have it in the play.
This is the 50s. No, this is the
58, 59.
And these 2 plays, Take My Demon Please and Take It Off, are about your time.
Take My Demon Please was Bob Ariano said, write something, don't write about nuclear power plants and expect anybody to think you know what you're talking about. Know what you're writing, right?
Write what you know.
Okay, yeah. So at the time I was a big H.P. Lovecraft. I loved him and Conan Doyle stories. And so I enjoyed the supernatural stuff. And also, I love comedy. I love comedians. I love particularly the one-liners, the voice circuit guys. So the thought, he said, write something different. So I thought, why not? And there was a movie, The Exorcism, around that time.
The Exorcist.
So why does a demon always have to be evil? It's always it's a pretty girl with a mean, nasty Beelzebub, and why does it have to be that way? Why couldn't it be a plain guy, boring? I pick banking, but a lot of things are boring. And it gets spirit taken over by a voice circuit comedian. It's just as different for him as that would be for the girl. So I came up with the idea of Henny Youngman, who was my favorite. In order to make it work in 1959 or 60, when I wrote this thing, I had to move it into the future. So, but now to revise the play, I brought it back. So what happens is this guy is taken over, who never told a joke in his life, by a voice circuit comic. He can't stop. Take my wife, please. Remember Penny Youngman? Mm-hmm. Well, let's take my name, you know. With all the, and I used his old joke book with all the funny things that he wrote. Now here's this guy trapped in his body, and coming out of loses his job. You know, he says to his boss, "Is that your wife or local stuff?" You know, this kind of stuff that's.
All right, so these are that's the first one. Take My Demon Please.
Yeah.
And the second is Take It Off. And Take It Off is about.
Is it autobiographical of my time working in Baltimore Street in the strip clubs? I don't know what the feeling is about language, but language is different than people. Remember in 1952, John Wayne gets an arrow in the back. He says, "Ouch! Oh my gracious! I think I have been hit. Oh my!" He probably didn't say that, right? No. He probably said what you couldn't say in 1997. So if I'm going to write about living with the mafia guys and the strippers and the bums off the street and the musicians, then I have to use the language that's used. And the language that's used is mature language. It's nothing that you won't hear probably on NCIS or something. So I think people ought to know you don't want to bring 12-year-olds. You know, there is one dance in there, but it's going to be screened. But the language will be the language of the 50s, the way we would speak now. You know.
And are you going to be playing in this? Are you going to be playing music in this, or?
Well, there's only going to be the one dance that we have a dancer hopefully behind the screen. So it'll be, and I'll record that with my wife and Christy. We'll make a trio, and like the 3 guys from there with the bangs and the cymbals, and then we'll stage it so that it's kind of off stage. And the dancer will dance so they get the idea of what it was like.
All right, and these 2 are going to be at the end of February. People can buy tickets at the Ice House.
Yeah, Ice House. I imagine I'll have it in the library.
How many weekends are you going to be doing it?
2 weekends.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've, just a minute left, what about the difference in life between Baltimore and New York? It's like night and day. Do you miss Baltimore at all?
You know, I miss what Baltimore has to offer. I don't miss the traffic, I don't miss the shootings, and I don't miss a lot of it. I do miss living where we did downtown Baltimore for 10 years within 2 blocks of 8 great restaurants. But you have to give and you have to take. And I think we'll stay where we are. We thought about moving back to Baltimore, but then, 2 people, one in the 80s, one in the 70s, walking down Baltimore Street with canes is a target. Man, you don't want to be that target. So we go to Baltimore a couple times a year. We spend a weekend, stay in a hotel, go to shows and things like that, see our friends. And our close friends and relatives we meet at Frederick for dinner. So
Perfect.
it works. It works.
So congratulations on these 2 plays
Okay,
and
thank
on
you.
your memoir, and hope to see them at the end of February. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And until next time, thank you for watching This Week in Morgan County.